Hey everybody, this week's video is a follow-up to last week's video where we talked about the most effective way to learn jazz vocabulary. Now I want to put that into action with some real examples and send you into the practice room with a true idea of how to do this. So if you haven't watched last week's video, I'll put a card somewhere on this video. Go and check it out before you watch this one. It'll put everything into context for you. So we're going to use the example of studying some flat 9 material in a very specific way. And I'm going to show you how I actually use the process of learning a sound rather than learning specific lines that I'm going to regurgitate in my solos. Instead, what I want to do is have a firm grasp on a particular way to use the flat 9 sound, allowing me to be more creative and stay a little bit more in the moment. Okay, so let's dive into the specifics. So what I want to do is I want to use a minor 2-5-1 in the key of A minor, and the specific concept that I would like to explore here is the fact that on a dominant 7 flat 9 chord, there is contained a diminished 7th chord based off of the 3rd. So if we take this 5 chord in the key of A minor, what I'm saying is that over an E7 flat 9 chord, if we use 3, 5, 7, and flat 9, what we get is a G sharp diminished 7 chord. And this is a great sound over this particular chord. So what we want to try to do is get our brain used to using that G sharp diminished 7 shape whenever we see an E7 flat 9 chord. So let's go over 4 examples of how we can start to get this into our playing and under our fingers. Now, the first thing I want to explain is that all 4 of these lines are going to have the same first measure because we're not concentrating on what to do over the 2 chord, we're concentrating on what to do over the 5 chord. So just to make things simple, we're going to use the same first measure for every example. So let's focus our attention on the second measure. So in all of these examples, I'm only going to be using notes from that diminished 7th chord based off of the 3rd, and we're going to do it in a variety of different ways. So let's hear what example number 1 sounds like. All right, so what am I doing over the second measure? Well, I'm starting on the 5th of the E7 flat 9. I'm outlining that diminished chord, and then I'm also highlighting the fact that there's a great resolution point going from the flat 9 of the 5 chord to the 5 of the 1 chord. And you'll see that characterized by an F moving to an E. So this particular line starts by descending, then we change directions and we figure out a great way to resolve flat 9 to 5. Okay, now let's check out example number 2. We'll talk about some of the similarities and differences. So in this line, you'll notice that I'm starting on the 3rd of the 5 chord. I'm still outlining that G sharp diminished 7, but this time I'm starting on a different note and I'm ascending. Now, do you notice in the second example, I'm still using that resolution point to the 5 on the 1 chord, trying to highlight that sound, but in a different way. So this is giving me a different starting point over the 5 chord, a different shape, I'm ascending, but I'm still trying to hear that same resolution. And this is solidifying that resolution sound, but I'm getting a little bit of experience approaching it in a different way, allowing me more flexibility. So what I'd probably do in my practice time is I'd probably write out 4, 5, 6 other lines using this same resolution point. But for the purposes of this video, let's move on to something different. Let's check out line number 3 and see how it differs. So over the 5 chord, this time I'm using the flat 9 as my first note. And I'm playing a completely different shape. This one is kind of like stair steps going up. Now you'll also notice I'm using a different resolution. This time I'm going from the 5th over the 5 chord and resolving that up to the 3rd over the 1 chord. Another really fantastic sound that you're going to want to use over a 2-5-1 like this. So again, this line demonstrates a different starting point over the 5 chord, flat 9, and now I'm starting to study a different resolution point, 5 to 3. All right, let's take a look at the fourth and final line that I have for you today. So again, what's happening over the 5 chord? Well, this time I'm starting on the 7th, I'm descending, then I'm turning around and ascending, and then again, similar to the last line, I'm highlighting that resolution point of the 3rd on the 1 chord. But again, notice that I'm rounding out where I'm starting over the 5 chord, this time using the 7th. So if we go back through the lines, I have one line starting on each note of that diminished chord. I have 2 lines that are utilizing that resolution point of the 5th over the 1 chord. And I have 2 other lines that are utilizing that resolution to the 3rd of the 1 chord. I'm mixing up the directions that I'm playing, trying to come up with a bunch of different textures for the lines, but they are all focusing on this one concept, which is utilizing that diminished chord built off of the 3rd. So there's a through line, and what I'm doing is I'm trying to come up with as much vocabulary that I can that's based off of this one concept. So what I'm not gonna do is I'm not gonna try to play these lines exactly in my solos. I'm not trying to play them note for note the way that I've written them. What I'm going to try to do is practice these lines enough that my ears understand this sound, the diminished chord based off of the 3rd, and my ears are also going to understand that I have 2 really, really good resolution points, 1 to the 5th, 1 to the 3rd. Now, if I were to write out 10 to 20 lines that use this, first of all, I'm going to get pretty good at discovering all of the good sounding textures, all of the good sounding ways to use this particular concept. And second of all, I'm going to have a bunch of experience of my fingers and my ears doing the thing that ultimately I want to be able to do in my solos. So now when I'm actually improvising, I'm going to feel this incredible sense of freedom, knowing that I can launch into this sound, and most likely my work in the practice room is going to make it so that I can put something together on the fly, because I have so much experience doing this on my instrument from every possible angle. And this is how you start to build the skills that will take you as far as you want to go when it comes to utilizing certain sounds in your solos. We're not memorizing lines and trying to play them note for note. We are just hammering this sound in our practice time, hoping that it becomes fluent and natural in our playing. So I hope all this makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments section below. But I really feel like this is the best way to practice vocabulary. And I hope this shows you a concrete example of how I do it and how my students do it to gain the ability to truly improvise when you're soloing on the bandstand. So if you got anything out of this video, please consider liking and subscribing. That really does help the channel, and I hope I brought you some value today. We'll see you on another video sometime soon. Bye, everybody.